Hi, this is Mr. Grove, and in this short video we're going to look at anatomical directional terms in a little bit more detail than my last video lecture. So let's get started. Remember that we use a standard body position, and that standard body position is called the anatomical position. And one thing to realize right away is that the right side in the anatomical position is the subject's right side, and the left side is the subject's left. You, the observer, it seems to be backwards, so you've got to be careful with that. Also remember that in the anatomical position, you're standing straight up, but it's pretty awkward because your palms are facing forward. So let's take a look at superior versus inferior. In the anatomical position that we're starting in, what we want to do is we want to put a transverse cut in here, and we essentially divide the body into two halves, an upper half known as superior and a lower half known as inferior. Superior also has another term that you might come across, and that is cranial, and just think of the skull's cranium. And inferior also has another term, and that term is caudal. And caudal literally means toward the tail. So think of the tail as being below, and anything down in that direction is inferior. Taking an example here, you can look at your eyes. Your eyes are above your mouth, so we can say the eyes are superior to the mouth, or conversely, we can say the mouth is inferior to the eyes. What about your nose and your eyes? Okay, of course you're going to say the eyes are superior to the nose, or the nose is inferior to your eyes. What about anterior versus posterior? In this case, we're going to use a coronal or frontal section to divide the body, again, into halves, with the front half literally being the front, face forward, and the back behind the body. They have different terms, of course, and those terms are anterior for the front half, also known as ventral. Ventral literally means belly, and this comes from doing anatomical terms for four-legged animals. And the back is known as posterior or dorsal. And dorsal is easy to remember. Just think of a shark slicing through the water, and you see the fin protruding out its back. That is known as a dorsal fin. So if we're going to look for an example, anterior versus posterior on the skeleton, we can take a look at the sternum. The sternum is anterior to the spine, or we could say the spine is posterior to the sternum. Medial and lateral. Again, what we're going to do here is divide the body into a right and a left side. And we do that with what's known as a sagittal cut. And this is what is known specifically as a mid-sagittal cut. And so anything that goes to the middle of that mid-sagittal cut, known as the midline, is medial. And anything moving away from the midline of the body is known as lateral. So medial means moving toward the midline of the body, while lateral means moving away from the midline of the body. So let's look at an example. In this example of the knee, we have two ligaments known as collateral ligaments. One is to the outside of the body, away from the midline, and so it's called the lateral collateral ligament. The other ligament is toward the midline of the body, so it is the medial collateral ligament. As far as intermediate, it's kind of an unusual one. In an intermediate, we look for something that is between a more medial and a more lateral structure. In this case, I'm picking the clavicle, which you can see is between the sternum, right down the midline of the body, and the shoulder out on the lateral end of the edge of the body. And so we say the collarbone or clavicle is intermediate between the sternum and the shoulder. Proximal and distal are real important terms. So what we do with these guys is we're usually talking about appendages or tubular structures, with proximal being close to the origin of the body part, or if we're talking about a limb, proximal is closer to where the limb attaches, distal is farther away. And you can see that example of the arm, the left arm, and the left leg. So for example, looking at the right hand and the right elbow, we can say the hand is distal to the elbow, or conversely, we can say the elbow is proximal to the hand. If we're looking at the leg, the right leg in this case, the ankle is farther away from the knee. It's farther away from the point of attachment. So we say the ankle is distal to the knee, while the knee is proximal to the ankle. Superficial versus deep. Superficial means closer to the surface of the body. So the skin, we would say, is superficial to the underlying muscles, or we can say the skin is superficial to the skeleton. So deep means away from the surface of the body. So if we're talking about skin and underlying muscles, we would say the underlying muscles are deep to the skin. In this example, the skin is superficial to the skeleton. Okay, so that's my discussion on some directional terms. I hope this was helpful.